Donald could feel the cave tighten around his body. As Jim released his legs, the pressure eased, and he slid forward back into the crevice. After some back-and-forth efforts, Jim realized he would need help to get Donald free. Jim was barely able to reach the area where Donald was stuck, since the tunnel squeezed down to just 18 inches in this area. It seemed unreal that his friend had just crawled forward into this tight spot, but now couldn't back out. Donald explained that some rocks had loosened when he slid, and it seemed that they were wedging against his body. Each time Jim pulled him back toward the passage, the rocks slid forward and blocked the exit hole. Pulling backwards was only pushing Donald into an impossibly narrow squeeze, and there was no way for Donald to move forward, because he was pressed against the tunnel walls, which had narrowed to 5 inches just beyond his head. The tunnel that Donald was stuck in was just big enough for one person to reach his feet at a time. The rescuers couldn't reach the rock that was blocking the path, and stuck under a rock that had broken free from the ceiling of this tunnel. Donald was cold and thirsty, trapped in every way possible. Cavers who knew the system well were aware that the other cave met this tunnel just near where Donald was stuck. They entered from the other side and explored until they found a passage that led directly to this tiny tunnel. But only the smallest cavers could squeeze into this passage. Lynn used her tiny frame to wiggle through the extremely small passages in Cave 2. She reached the area where they linked together, but it was a mere 5 inches wide in this location. Reaching as far as she possibly could, she was unable to reach Donald's head. It was a winding, cramped little opening that kept her about 2 feet away from reaching him. They were devastated to see that reaching him from that side was not going to be possible. This left the rescue team unable to offer him warm water or nourishment of any kind. Donald would not be pulled back out, nor moved forward. They would have to try something else. They started digging, hoping to break through to the part of the tunnel where Donald was stuck. Unfortunately, they were about 12 feet away from the target tunnel. They continued to try to reach him by digging laterally to find a way to connect to the passage. He had been trapped for 36 hours in a downward angle position. It was only 57 degrees inside the caves, and attempting to keep him warm was a serious challenge. Late on Sunday, at nearly 2 o'clock in the morning, they heard grunting responses from Donald. They knew that he was suffering from hypothermia, but he was still alive. By Monday morning, they were getting close, but encountered extremely difficult bedrock areas that were impossible to simply dig through, with no food, no water, and constant cold exposure. A nurse was sent down the main tunnel with a handheld Doppler machine, an EKG, to determine Donald's status. She was unable to get a pulse with either instrument, but she only had access to his cold legs below the knee. It would not be a 100% confirmation of whether he was still hanging on or not. They moved to use the most extreme methods available, including dynamite and a backhoe. It was risky, but if they didn't get to him quickly, there was absolutely no chance of his survival. On Tuesday morning, they had finally reached his location, and a doctor was sent down to confirm what was long suspected. Donald Weltner had died.